A Fox News alert, the deadline for nuclear enrichment with Iran passed yesterday. That was the deadline. And despite the levels of enrichment brought to lower levels, Iran is still defying the world and continuing to do their research. On Fox News Sunday, Chris Wallace pressed Secretary of State John Kerry on this very issue. Here's the give and take.
Instead of sanctions, Iran is going to get $2.8 billion more in assets that we have frozen instead of sanctions, even though there's no deal, and they continue to their research and their enrichment.
Actually, Chris, they're reducing their enrichment, and the fact is that this is the first time in 10 years under this current deal that Iran's nuclear program is being rolled back. And I know you and others don't ever want to give the Obama administration credit for almost anything, but the fact is this is the first administration to get a rollback in those 10 years. And right now, Israel and countries in the region and the world are safer. No, Chris, you like to ask questions, but you don't like to get answers.
I do, sir, but they are able to continue enrichment. They are able to continue work on their centrifuges.
Chris, I don't care how many questions you ask. I'm going to finish my answer.
Okay. Joining us right now with his reaction is Senate Minority Leader, Senator Mitch McConnell. Senator, welcome to the couch.
Glad to be here.
Your reaction, he says he is the first administration getting to roll back their program.
Yeah, well, here's the problem. The Iranians know that the president and his people like to talk, so they're going to talk as long as they can. What we had been recommending, which the president, interestingly enough, threatened to veto in the State of the Union message, was that the talks were fine, but at the end of this period, which ended July 20th, they would get tougher sanctions, not weaker sanctions.
If they didn't get a deal.
If they didn't get a deal. We didn't interrupt the talks, but if the talks didn't work, tougher sanctions. The president threatened to veto that in the State of the Union, which means, to me, we like talking, and the Iranians have figured out that we like talking.
Does that mean you're not going to do anything in the Senate to ratchet up the sanctions and try to keep to your word?
The majority leader has been preventing us from having that vote. And the reason he prevented us from having that vote is I think they were fearful if we had the vote, it would actually win. So, here we are again. We passed the July 20th deadline. The talks continue, they say, for another 4 months. I think it makes sense once again to advocate that at the end of that period of talking, at the very least, you get tougher sanctions, not easier sanctions.
Well, let's talk about another failure of the administration. On our southern border right now, it's pretty much an invasion. 8-year-old kids are walking across, and Border Patrol agents 50 miles in are having to become babysitters and take care of them. Later today in Austin, Rick Perry is going to announce that he's going to order up 1,000 National Guardsmen to the southern border. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think it's a good idea, but we know how to stop this. We know how to stop this. You need to detain the children humanely and send them home.
What about changing the law?
Well, the reason most of these youngsters are not coming from Mexico and Canada is because we did change the law in 2008, which allowed humane detention and immediate return without going into all of the legal processes that these youngsters from Central America are subjected to. Typically what happens, they're brought before an immigration judge, they're giving a date sometime in the future, and they're released into the custody of someone, and they never come back. So look, it's very, very simple. If the word got out that you'd be humanely detained and immediately returned, it would stop. It doesn't require massive amounts of federal assistance that the president asked for.
Evidently, we had this problem with Brazil, and we did do that.
Did exactly that. And Brian, and another interesting point, I get the impression the Secretary of Homeland Security, Jay Johnson, is for this, but he seems to have been overruled by the White House, which has apparently decided, because we know the president requested almost $4 billion to throw money at the problem.
Yes.
That isn't going to stop it.
You know, Senator, I have to ask you, too. I mean, we heard just Friday the numbers coming through, family units illegally crossing the border, not just children, as we keep hearing from the administration here. 5 times higher are the family units that are coming in since 2013. We have 55,420 groups coming in, not to mention members of gangs that have been confirmed by some border control there. I mean, this problem, though, is being blamed on Republicans by the president. Are you to blame?
Well, it has nothing to do. Well, he wants to say this is because we didn't pass comprehensive immigration reform last year. It has absolutely nothing to do with that. What it further illustrates is how insecure the border is, which is the reason why the American people were reluctant to support comprehensive immigration reform, because until you secure the border, nothing else makes sense.
Senator Lindsey Graham said if we do not come up with comprehensive immigration reform by 2016, Republicans can't win the White House. Your reaction?
Well, I think right now we need to demonstrate that we can secure the border by getting these youngsters back home as quickly as possible. Until the American people see us have some success with border security, I don't think they're going to be open to the broader question of comprehensive immigration reform.
Let's talk about the story of one young girl by the name of Muna, who was from Mali. She was here in this country, and then back in 2011, her father abducted her, took her back to Mali.
Yeah.
Her mother, Dr. Noelle Hunter, has spent years trying to bring her back. Thanks to work of you and others, the little girl is now finally reunited with her mother.
Well, her mother's the hero. I mean, she contacted us a couple of years ago, and honestly, we weren't sure we could ever get this little girl back. But through her persistence and our sort of harassing the ambassador in Mali, it had a wonderful ending. The American ambassador showed up at a court proceeding. The government, at our urging, gave custody to Dr. Hunter, who had flown over a couple of weeks ago. The ambassador took her to the airport and literally saw her off.
That's great.
And I had the opportunity to meet her at the airport when she got here. It's a wonderful story.
It was a tough nut to crack because this guy who abducted his daughter, carted her off to another country, he was from a very influential family in Mali.
Yeah, he was. And it took a lot of American pressure to break through that. But the real hero of the story, heroine, I guess, is Dr. Hunter. She never gave up. She thought this could be done, and we responded to her insistence and had a good outcome.
Yeah, optimistic about your race?
Incredible.
You're up 6 points, I guess, in the latest poll?
Yeah, we're going to win. It's a big race. You know, when you're the leader of one of the parties in the Senate, you're a big target for the other side, and every crazy liberal in the country knows who I am, and they're sending money to my opponent.
All right. Senator Mitch McConnell, thank you very much for dropping by the Curvy Couch.
Glad to be here.
Thank you.